Okay, and we're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Pencil live stream with me, Tom Edwards, the head of content here at Pencil. And this week, I am joined by our CTO and co-founder, Sumukh, for the first time on the Pencil live stream. So great to have you on, Sumukh. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me here, Tom.
Excellent. So this week we're talking about agents because we know that there's been a lot of interest. We see in the social numbers that when we're talking about agents, people are really interested in it. We're getting lots of questions. Clients are asking, and I know that you are spending a lot of time thinking about agents and executing on our agents proposition as well. So I guess first of all, do you want to tell me about these changes that we've made recently that's speeded up the way that agents inside Pencil are delivering? What's the top line?
Absolutely. We've seen at least a 2x to 3x speed up in the time taken to first response for the agents. The speed, in fact, the increase is dramatic in the sense that previously we saw that even to get to the point where the LLM can start responding, it would take around 4 seconds. We did a lot of analysis and we found that we can reduce that to about less than 1 second. So that's been massive for us. The team has spent a lot of time in building tools and using tools to kind of really do very deep analysis to see where is the time being lost. And they have done a lot of good work in identifying really hard spots and effectively solutioning them with very hardcore engineering. And that has led to this massive increase that we can see in terms of the speed of response.
Amazing. So to confirm, that's 2 to 3 times faster that the agents are delivering. And so we're not actually talking about the LLM responses themselves. We should probably explain to anyone who's not working at Pencil or inside Pencil. We aggregate lots of
Just need to
models.
get the door. I'm so really sorry.
Oh,
Someone's
okay. Yeah, sure thing. Yeah,
give me
no
one
worries.
second. Sorry.
Um, okay. Well, this is the joys of running live streams. So everybody is stuck with me for a few seconds. I'm not going to pause the stream because hey, we're live and we want to talk about agents. And just as soon as Sumukh has answered his front door, I'm sure we're going to get back into it again. So I'll just pick up where I left off there for a minute. So what we're actually talking about here is not the responses from the LLMs themselves. So we at Pencil, we aggregate lots of different models. So that's one of the great things about being on Pencil is that you can switch between the latest OpenAI model or the latest Google model or the latest model from Adobe or Getty or whoever else. And our agents are inside the platform and they are the ones that are talking to the different LLMs. And so the engineering that Sumukh is going to tell us a little bit more about very soon is in the way that those agents are able to speak to and understand responses from those different LLMs. And one of the most exciting ways that people are using the platform is by using these agents essentially as team members, daisy chaining them and getting them to make calls and responses back and forth from the LLMs and driving productivity as a little workforce inside the platform. All of which I'm sure Sumukh is about to explain much
I'm
better
really
than I
sorry
could.
about that. You're
How did you get
perfectly
on? Yeah,
on
no
timing
worries.
on that. I'm
All good.
perfectly on timing on that.
Yeah, no worries. Was it the postman or or
It's
don't know.
British gas.
British Gas. Okay, okay, brilliant. Good. Well, good to know that your utilities are all being well looked after. um, okay, so look, I was just sort of explaining in probably a slightly ham-fisted way about how what we're really talking about here is not the inference from the LLMs themselves, not the actual large language model responses. It's the way that the agents inside Pencil are programmed to speak to them, right? So are we talking about speeding up API calls to and from large language models, or is it something even more kind of core than that?
Yeah, so it's something before that. So generally, the APIs that hit the large language models and get the response from that are pretty optimized. Responses come in milliseconds, so that's not really the bottleneck. There's a whole bunch of things that need to happen before it actually hits the large language model. The biggest thing there is about context, making sure that the LLMs themselves are not really aware of the context of the user. So we have to do a lot of work to bring the context, the right kind of information, such that the LLMs can actually do the right task. So that's the part which actually takes time.
Mm.
That's one aspect of it. Second thing is loading the user session from memory, which takes like what has all the previous chats been about, what is actually going on, and then passing on the right kind of information. If the users have done any attachments, like it could be documents, it could be images, it could be videos, those need to be processed and pre-processed in such a way that the LLMs can actually do something with them, and those things further at time. So what we observed is that, let's say the time to first response was about 4 seconds, the LLMs were taking only about 300, 400 milliseconds of that.
Right.
And there was about 3.5 seconds of pretty much doing a lot of other things. And we identified some key spots there, which we immediately understood that this could be tackled, could be optimized, and that's the thing which is brought down by about 2 seconds to massive reduction, almost a 52x to 3x speed increase before
Brilliant.
LLMs can actually start doing their job.
Okay, excellent. And so when we're talking about context, then essentially what we're talking about is all the stuff that makes the response specific to your brand, right? And that is what we're all about at Pencil, and that is what the kind of where the industry is moving generally, right? It's in making the responses from LLMs less generalized and more specific and niched down into the particulars of your brand. And so I guess in really simple terms, what you're saying is that the platform is taking all of the context that it needs to get a very specific response for your brand, and then putting that all together in a much more efficient way so that you can just get quicker responses that are also very specific. Is that
Exactly. At a high level, that's exactly what it is. It's collecting all of that information, finding information from sources which may be online, from the brand library, from the documents that the user have attached, finding relevant sections, not just all the whole document. It's finding relevant sections which deals with RAG to find the relevant sections, collecting all of that, packaging it up, and passing it to the LLM. They then do the next task, which could be writing a blog post, could be writing an email, which is all on brand, or generating images which are on brand, and so on.
brilliant? Okay, so I'll just say here quickly for people that are coming in, that are watching, if you've got questions for Sumukh about agents or about Pencil generally, the technical side of Pencil, he's the CTO. So get them into the comments on LinkedIn or on YouTube, and I will leave time for Q&A at the end if we get any. This is your opportunity to speak to someone who really knows their onions in terms of building with large language models. So get your questions in. So on the question of agents, then on speeding them up, why is that important for marketers? Like why should marketers care that an agent can come back to them a couple of seconds faster?
I think it's all down to two things. When people post a question to an LLM, there's two aspects of it which goes on. Nobody likes waiting in front of a screen, not knowing what is happening. They want to be able to know if what they're asking for is doable by an LLM, is it on the right track? And chat is fundamentally a lot of iterative kind of work. You ask something, the LLM comes back with an answer. It may not come back with the right answer, and then you kind of give it more context, and it's got to be about being very collaborative and being fast. And if this interaction pattern is not fast, then fundamentally that kind of premise itself breaks, and everything becomes like, oh, I'm just going to go and do it the old way and do it traditional way. The scaling and the power of having a tool which is very, very capable and being able to kind of scale your abilities kind of goes away. That's the first aspect. Second thing is that that we have feeds and sheets as a feature within the platform where you can bring in agents at scale and not only operate at one task at a time, but you can do it across multiple tasks at a time. But even in that, if each of those agents in each cell is going to take time to respond, you're waiting and waiting, and then and it just kind of the delay just amplifies,
Yeah,
and that kind of creates more frustration and more pain. And you would say, oh, maybe I could have just done this myself
yeah.
instead of using the power of AI. So I think speed is everything, because it's not about getting it absolutely right by taking 10 minutes time. It's about getting, hey, am I on the right track in 1 second? And then, oh yeah, you're going on the right track. Let's do a little bit more of this. And then take a second ahead and keep going down. It's about feedback and continuously iterating faster to reach your answer.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you're saying about feeds, because I think we tend to think about a response from an LLM as, the one that, okay, it's 2 more seconds. But actually, when you're scaling, when you're at enterprise level, you're thinking about all of the different people and all of their different 2 seconds is around your organization, your creative humans. And then if you're working in feeds, for the example that you just gave, that's really an exponential growth in delays, right? So shaving off 2 seconds from every agent response, actually, when you scale it up across a whole enterprise over a whole year, it actually adds up to quite a lot of money, right?
And I think actually agents are fantastic even when you're doing it in chat. It's brilliant. But I think the real unlock is going to come is when you can do agents on numerous tasks on bulk. And that's when the real time saving and effort saving is going to start showing up. I mean, it's not a paradigm which is very common in the industry right now. People are still trying to come in terms with how do you use AI, how do you use agents. But I think the game changing is going to be in feeds with agents, lots of tasks. You let it them go, they do the first pass, and all of them are happening, and then you're quickly reviewing. So you're changing the nature of work from me sitting and doing things to I'm getting an assistant to do it for me, and I'm reviewing and then giving pointers and feedback on what should be changed here and there. And that's the power of AI really coming to life. So I honestly think that's going to be huge. And speed and being able to collaborate very asynchronously and very fast with the machine is going to be massive in this scenario.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it kind of, I, I, I tend to, whenever we do these live streams, you start getting into like the philosophy of business quite quickly, right? Because you start to think, well, what does an organization actually look like in like 5 years' time if everybody's got a team of like 10 agents or more working across a feed? Like, do you have an idea on just how marketing teams are going to change over the course of the next few years as agents become more commonplace?
And that's a brilliant question. And I think that's one of the things which I also wanted to talk about what is coming next and kind of segues into that is what we are thinking is that we've allowed our customers to build and our users to build lots of agents. But the moment you go to lots of agents, you're opening a new can of worms is I actually don't know which agent to use at which point in time. And it becomes the App Store problem, if you ask me. When I go to the App Store and I look at it and I see hundreds of apps, and you're like,
Yeah.
I actually don't know which one to pick, and it kind of leads to paralysis, and you actually don't know what to do,
Yeah.
and then you stick to the same four apps that you do all the time, kind of thing, but not really unlocking value. We don't want that to be the thing. With agents, we have two kinds of problems. You want an agent to do a specific task because, and even though the technology has grown significantly over the last 2 years, agents are only really good at doing one task and one task really, really well. When you try to create an agent which is like an Uber agent, which is trying to do too many things, it
Mm,
again starts collapsing. Hopefully, in the near future, this thing changes and technology evolves to be able to handle that, but it still isn't the case. But at the same time, when you have lots of agents, you don't know how do you kind of work with them, how do you orchestrate them. So one of the next things that we want to do is achieve two things. In the first place is when a user comes into the platform, we want to be able to get more context from them, get more of what is your brief, get what is your goal, and then guide them along the path. Like they start with, we immediately give them conversation starters relevant to the task at hand instead of fixed conversation starters to do the first task. And once it does the first task, there is an agent which is running behind the scenes to look at your goal and start planning out, given the available pool of agents, saying, oh, you need to be doing this first, and then followed by this, and then
mm,
followed by this. And not only telling you which agent to use, but also writing relevant conversation starters to get the process kicked off. So it's
right.
almost like I'll click the button, I'll see it come through, oh, I like that, and then I click a next button, and I like that, and so on. So one is to kind of make it easy to kind of chain the process and go forward.
Yeah.
That's I would say you could say level one kind of making it easier to work with agents. Level two is when it starts becoming more autonomous in the sense, and you give the brief or you give n number of briefs. An agent looks at it, plans the process, takes a first pass, and then a human is reviewing the outputs at each stage. And based on what feedback is coming through, it's dynamically redoing this. So you could have workflow automation has been there for 20 years now. It's
Yeah.
not nothing new, but the difference between a standard workflow and these kind of things is the workflow is dynamically decided by an agent looking at the task at hand, so it becomes custom built workflows for that. And second thing is, as and when the feedback comes, and feedback could come at a later stage for anything in between, it automatically you know does all the jobs which are subsequent
Yeah.
based on the feedback in the previous steps and aligns itself to achieve the goal. And I think that when you think about it in the context of feeds and sheets, where you could run at multiple tasks at the same time, you're allowing people to amplify their effort by orders of magnitude, which is not possible today. And I
Yeah.
think that's the direction the marketing is going to go through, that a person is going to have a number of assistants to do things which previously required a lot more time. I wouldn't say a lot more people, because same people would be able to do a lot more marketing content.
Yeah.
And I think that's the at the core of what we decided at Pencil was to be able to give a tool to people to amplify their effort. And that I think is going to be achieved very, very soon.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm absolutely with you on that. The fact that it's scaling up what the humans can do rather than replacing the humans, which I know is what other businesses want to do. That's very much not what we want to do at Pencil. We're all about empowering the creative humans to just do a lot more. You mentioned workflow automations, which I think is an interesting question, because I think a lot of people in this space actually don't really understand the difference between an agent, or they often think that a basic sort of linear workflow automation is an agent, right? I hear workflow automations being described as agents sometimes, where it's there's a like a logic loop that's just pulling some information and then doing something to it and then giving you an output. People call that an agent, which is not my understanding of what an agent is, right? So, like, how would you define the difference between what we define as agents inside Pencil and just like a sort of standard workflow automation? Is it all about like the context and like decision making? Like,
Yeah,
how do you think about that?
yeah, so I would say that very simply, the question comes down to who is putting in the decisions that need to be to be taken in the workflow. Typical standard workflow automation involves a human defining the steps, putting in the rules, and then the automation just runs it irrespective of the scenario. There is no change. You could introduce more loops, you could introduce more cases to be handled, and more very complex workflow automation. But ultimately, changing the automation rules requires a human to do it. It runs the same thing again and again, irrespective of the context. That's workflow automation.
Yeah.
Agent is where we haven't defined the rules. We've defined the goal. We haven't defined the rules. We haven't defined the path to traverse to reach the goal. You just give it the goal, and you give enough context to do what is the necessary information to achieve the goal, and the agent breaks down the steps it needs to reach there by its own. That's the first thing. Second thing is, based on the context, its steps will change. That's that's the beauty of it. And you don't need to tell how to kind of handle different scenarios. As the agents start becoming more smarter, they get more sophisticated. And this is the reason why we have lots of agents which do specific tasks. And there is an agent which looks at all of this and orchestrates how do you align all of this to achieve the goal.
So there's an element of it that's planning. There's an element of like mapping out what you want to do
Yeah.
that that a workflow automation obviously doesn't have, that an agent can do. And I saw an article somewhere about how
You
the
could say in very cheeky ways, agent is automating the automation of workflow automation.
okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like agent inception, right? Like automating the thing that automates the thing that automates the thing that automates the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it does blow your mind where we're going to get to in a few years. Like, I've said this before on the stream, but it is like we're all going to be the CEO of a little company, right? And I think that probably, the power users inside Pencil, probably some of them feel like that already, right? They've already got a team. Okay, it's got quite a short attention span, right? Like, I think that the technology's not quite there to have really sort of long-term actionable memory. Although, I mean, that's kind of what you've been working on, right? Is getting that, giving the agents more presence of mind and more um, like recall over its context, right?
Yeah. So I think one of the things which is going to happen, and this is my kind of a pet peeve of the industry, is information is still extremely siloed. Creative is product produced, like planning and strategy happens separately. Creative production happens separately. Media planning happens separately, and
Mm.
media execution happens separately. Whether it's in Pencil or whether it's elsewhere, the industry is definitely going to get more verticalized in the sense that instead of being horizontal across these, it's going to go more like tools are going to be able to allow a single person or a very small team of people to be able to execute the entire marketing life cycle at much higher speeds. So it's going to get more that way in the sense that, and then it opens up then teams to do a lot more in terms of
Yeah.
lot more channels, lot more placements, lots more ways of touch points of reaching the customers, and tracking it all the way from concept, strategy, creation, production, and then finally to executing them, and then looping back to see what insights they can derive and how they can constantly evolve this whole cycle, rather than having, I've done my job and I don't know what happened with the production after it's gone out of my
Yeah.
hands, kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think that is where we're seeing the real ROI come from Pencil, and like just the industry generally is like having that whole process that would have been, as you say, you're sending it across the building to different groups of people. You're now doing your media planning in one place, and then you're thinking about okay, so how does my creative look, what does my script look like, and it's all different agents helping you with all of those different things in one place.
And we've seen very smart D2C brands already do it. They're very efficient at doing it, but that's because of the nature and the culture of the way they do it. It's just going to become the industry standard as every company can you know enable themselves to do it.
Yeah. We're starting to get comments through on the video. I don't know if any of these are directly questions, but let's see. I'm just reading as I'm talking. So Peter Mulder says the calculator and Excel didn't replace financial analysts. They just gave them the ability to do much more, much quicker. Pencil will just allow creatives to experiment faster to get results quicker. I mean, I couldn't have said that better
No,
myself.
that's perfect analogy. I mean, it's the absolute perfect analogy of what's going to happen.
Yeah. Anything to add, or I mean, we can maybe swipe some of that for social content for Pencil. I
We
think.
should we should put that on our website. That's a
Yeah, yeah.
brilliant analogy.
Thanks, Peter. So Anna, regular viewer Anna, thanks for tuning in again. Says regarding making decisions around the house, I think I just replaced my husband. Okay, I don't know. I don't know if that's what we designed it for, but go ahead. Okay, so no questions coming through, but there is conversation going on. If you do have actual direct questions for Sumukh, do please get them in the comments. But we'll move on to the final kind of questions that I had for you. So I guess we've kind of touched on this, but the question I had is about how this fits into the bigger picture of Pencil. So things like predictive scoring, which we haven't really touched on, creative production inside the platform itself, measuring campaign performance, how do agents fit into these other core competencies that we have at Pencil?
I would say agents are already operating in each one of these areas, albeit, still in a little bit siloed way. Like for example, predictive scoring is still um, pretty much an agent-driven workflow. You are describing, there are two kinds of predictive scorings that we have in Pencil. Some of them that we have built from scratch, looking at large volumes of data, like the media performance scoring, which is built on all past historic ads our customers have shared with us, and built a custom scoring engine specific to each customer. So those have been built with a traditional, scoring pipeline, as you
Mm,
could call it. But at the same time, we've also introduced the ability for our customers to kind of go and define their own score on the platform, which could be anything like, does this ad work for 25-year-olds interested in skating? So it could be a sneaker brand, and they're trying to figure out if this is going to engage with 25-year-olds who are interested in skating.
mm,
And you could just post this question into this predictive scoring engine. And behind the scenes, there's an LLM which kind of looks at all the historic data, looks at the creative in question, and then comes back with a score. And we fine tuned this to kind of get back to a score between 0 and 100, which gives us an engagement of specific to that question on how well it will do that.
mm.
So you could say that that's almost just an agent which has been restricted to answer a specific question. So that's where agents are already fitting into predictive scoring. Creative production, as we've already seen with the launch of Nano Banana and GPT Image 1, is already becoming a lot more easier with agents dedicated to build social ads, and already VO3 going into video production, and the next new models which will come out, which will make it very easy for agents to natively control these models to achieve what the user asks. So previously, you needed to be an expert in prompting to be able to get an image generation output which was of high quality. You need to know the tips and tricks and everything, and how do you structure the prompts. But all that is going away. As long as you can natively communicate with an agent in general day-to-day language, you can instruct it in a very easy manner. And behind the scenes, agents are built to be able to communicate with the models in the right way, build the structures of the prompts in the right way. We've already built them with bias breaker and other things to remove bias, and then they go ahead and automatically do the job. So that takes a huge load off in terms of the entry barrier of what we need to do for creative production. And as you said, with campaign performance, we've already connected insights and performance data to the agents, and you can go ahead and ask the agents about what's working, what's not working, how does it benchmark against other industry standards, and they are able to analyze huge amounts of data and then give you very deep insights. And one of the interesting things that we saw is this is a very dense data set. For each ad that we collect, we extract tags out of them. From the tags, we pivot on based on so many metrics and everything. Even as a human, it becomes very dense to parse. But when LLMs are looking at these, not only are they doing the first level aggregations, they're able to go and do the second level aggregations and come up with very interesting insights, which are just totally mind blowing in my opinion. Like when you let them run on the creative benchmarks, and it's so interesting the insights which have already come in. Generally, I've seen users being blown away with the kind of feedback that they receive when they see that, and then using that as inspirations for the next level of creative production.
Yeah, yeah. I totally agree. It's really, someone who's worked in marketing for, over a decade now. It's so interesting just how different the day to day is now from what it used to be when I first got started in, like social media, right? Like just the idea that you would write everything just from what's in your brain and type it on a keyboard, and just seems mad now that you would even, so much of it is automatable, and so much of the of what you do, you just have the opportunity to have a much deeper level of research and insight into everything. You're right, like all of your content just can be so much better informed than it ever would have been when you're, I remember like live tweeting for, like my employers back, like in 2012, 2013 or whatever, when these platforms were new. And it was all just like, it's all just off the top of your head from what knowledge you had. And I think that's why journalists really took to Twitter, right? Is because they had lots of knowledge stored in their heads. Now anyone can kind of be an expert on any subject, and the experts are even better than they would have been because they know exactly what to ask. It's the quality of information, I think, is so much better now, and we don't often consider that change. I think when we think people talk about AI slop or whatever, they don't consider that actually we're getting much better quality, better researched, more strategically understood information than we've ever had in the past. I think now it's a real change that I think is underappreciated.
Absolutely. I mean, it's going to be interesting when I have a theory about this is that information moving towards knowledge, and I'd kind of my suspicion is there's going to be some breakthroughs in LLMs where beyond just being parsing of information systems, they're going to start accruing knowledge and
Right.
knowledge bases,
Yeah.
and that's when it's going to go towards more generic forms of intelligence. But it's not totally unreasonable. Like if 10 years back someone would have told me that there would be a system where you could just go and ask it anything and it can process any amount of information and give you the right answer, I would say that's just totally unheard of, or impossible.
Mm.
And we are here today. So if someone tells me in 10 years time or even 5 years time there's going to be systems capable of accruing knowledge, I wouldn't write it off.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I mean, a large part of what the industry is doing now, like as we've been discussing, is about building knowledge bases for businesses, right? Like, and improving the efficiency that you
I
can
mean,
call on that
the
information, right?
industry terminology of knowledge bases, I would say, still is a misnomer. It's less knowledge and more just information. It's just more
Okay, okay,
information banks. Knowledge is when you can kind of look at information and derive secondary or tertiary levels of intuitions based on
okay.
that. And I think that's going to be the biggest change, because right now even what you call knowledge base is, in most industry terminology, those are just information banks. They're not true knowledge. True
Okay.
knowledge is when you can take that and then carry forward and apply it anywhere else. That's yet to be, I think, unlocked.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I guess we're getting quite
We're getting
philosophical
into
again, right?
esoteric.
Like, and then does wisdom come next? Because I kind of feel like LLMs can actually be quite wise at times as well. Um, yeah, interesting. Okay, well, look, before we wrap up, then, Sumukh, is there anything that you would like to cover that you want to let people know about in terms of agents, or really anything else that you've got on your to-do list, on your pipeline, that you think is important for people to know?
Yeah, I think as I already touched upon, we're trying to make the entry barrier to start using agents for day-to-day marketing workflows in the very immediate short term much smaller. So and we want to bring in the capability for marketers to come onto the platform, upload briefs directly, and let agents guide you through the process. And I think that's going to be the biggest short term thing. And when I say short term, it's like in the next month or so we're going to be launching these features into the platform and really reducing the barrier to drop your brief, let the agents guide you through, get the outputs, and then refine. And my suspicion is that it'll drop the amount of time it takes to work on a brief, even if it's not fully automated, down from, let's say, today's 100% time to about, you know maybe 50-60%. So it'll give you easily a 30 to 50% kind of time saving, which is huge if we can do this consistently. And I
Yeah.
think that's going to be the power of unlock that you're going to see very short term, and this year is really exciting where we want to be able to first focus on realistic terms, real value, day to day achievements, and then unlock the power at scale using feeds and sheets. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Excellent. Yeah, and if there are any pencil users who aren't yet using feeds, I think we would both recommend that you do so. We've seen some really like powerful examples of teams inside Pencil using these functionalities and getting great results.
And I'd like
Yeah,
to,
go ahead.
and just to call out that Feeds has now actually been independently even released as a Sheets kind of a work item where you don't need to connect it to a creative to kind of get started. So we've made it much easier. So that's launched yesterday. So you should go ahead and try that out as well.
Brilliant. And finally, VO3 is now 50% cheaper as well,
Oh,
which we've been
yes.
posting about on LinkedIn. So I need to make sure I get a call out for that as well. If you are creating video content, then make sure you hop into Pencil because you can create much more for much less, fewer credits, 50% fewer credits. So more experimentation and creative output. Anything else, Sumukh, from you before we wrap up here?
No, Tom, it was really good discussion. We swung around short term. We looked at very far out, industry wide kind of things, which I love to talk about. And thanks for having me here. It was really good talking to you.
Excellent. Thanks so much for jumping on. Okay, everybody, that's it for this week. As always, make sure you're checking in every Tuesday. We're here, we're talking about product roadmaps, we're talking creative, talking about the AI industry and everything in between. So if you want to make sure that you are being kept up to date with what's going on in the creative AI industry, make sure you are following Pencil on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, or wherever else you happen to be. We're probably also there. That's it for us for this week. Thanks for joining us. Sumukh, thanks so much for jumping on.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you
Yeah.
next time.